Hey YouTube. So I just saw the official Star Wars Episode 7 Force Awakens teaser trailer. And I mean, this is like something that I actually wasn't waiting for. I wasn't really that excited about the prequel trilogy. I was a little bit excited when it first came out. Um, with episode 1 because I was like, oh, okay, it kind of looks cool. It's a new Star Wars adventure. It's going to take us back through the history that led up to the original trilogy, and it's going to tell us about sort of what happens uh, leading up to everything and how the Empire came to be. But then it actually came out, and we had kind of a mixed feeling about it, and a lot of people kind of jumped on the hate wagon and drank the haterade or whatever they want to call it. And it was like, well, yes, it's not great and everything, but when you actually look back at the original trilogy, was it even really that great? I mean, it was playing on a lot of tropes from uh, classical folklore and epics, uh, which was one of the reasons why it played so well. And even the first edit of Star Wars, when Lucas had exclusive control, was just awful. And audiences hated it. And an unnamed editor to this day, uh, still unidentified, reworked the film uh, into something a lot more palatable for the audience. Then, for the second film, you got a really awesome director, Irving Kershner, who did an amazing, spectacular job on all of Empire Strikes Back. Made it into a really interesting and exciting film, and just stuck in little things to give you a little bit more of a sense of this world. One of the big things that Kirshner talks about in the commentary track is that for the scene on Dagobah uh, where it's raining and Yoda and Luke are in Yoda's house, uh, Kirshner got this idea of what if R2 was outside looking through the window on his and and kind of standing up on tiptoes, and they had to rig up this whole special thing, but it ended up really making a great start for the scene. It ended up kind of giving it a good framing at the beginning to kind of lead you in, uh, so that the reason why we're curious about this is because R2 is curious about this. He's followed along somehow, probably wiggling back and forth on his way over the swamp, and he's made it all the way there to see what's going on with Luke, and that kind of leads you in. So then we see him peeking through the window as, we see what happens in the rest of the story for that scene. So that was really cool. But then we got Return of the Jedi, and that had to have even more cute stuff, and they got the Ewoks, and um, they had Yoda dying, and you've seen it. You've seen Return of the Jedi. You know what all is in there, and you know that while it wasn't perfect, it kind of brought the series to a close nicely. The special edition was kind of cool because they showed the Empire kind of falling across the galaxy. Although, how they would know about the Emperor dying, I don't know. Maybe the rebels put out something about it as soon as the Emperor died, and just kind of kept it that way. Anyway, so my only issue there really is that it kind of it kind of begged a certain question as to where on earth they were going to go from there. Now, if you've read the literature or played the games that were set after Return of the Jedi, you actually kind of already know what happened. There's books out there. There's all this really good info, um, and really interesting stories in the comic books, in print, and everything. You know, there is already canon there that is considered official Star Wars canon. There's the Thrawn saga, there's the Splinter Empire, um, there's the Clone Emperor saga, which involved like some kind of galaxy gun, which was capable of like destroying a star or a planet from anywhere in the galaxy. And then there was this whole kind of replicator plot where like these uh, droid automatons would consume all of a planet and turn all of the raw material into droid starfighters and all that kind of thing. And so it was really kind of an interesting um, plot because it was a really dark thing, and it's like, how on earth are we going to stop this? And meanwhile, Luke actually has an even stronger conflict um, with the dark side than he did in the original trilogy. Back when we're watching Return of the Jedi, and he kind of chooses the path of the Jedi. You have this whole saga involving um, the new Jedi Order and everything there. So it's a really amazing story. But then they brought on JJ Abrams, and I actually don't consider JJ Abrams to be a very good producer or director. I just consider him a popular one. He's popular because he produces the stuff and gets it out there. He's kind of the David Cronenberg of his time, if you will. And he doesn't really care as much about the writing process and keeping it all together. So I actually have the teaser trailer up right here on the screen, and I'm gonna watch it and give kind of my commentary. The first thing I have to say is that the first 10 seconds of this teaser trailer give you nothing. You get the little, oh, this has been approved to accompany this feature by blah blah blah, and then it's so much black with no noise whatsoever. You don't get any noise, any sound. You're just starting out completely from black. So they're directly wasting your time between the little green screen that tells you that this preview has been approved and the black nothing. So then they cut to some desert and you don't know where the hell you are. I have the sound muted just because I suppose I can unmute it. And there's an awakening. Have you felt it? And cut to some black guy in stormtrooper equipment, stormtrooper armor, in the middle of the desert, and he's, jerked up into the camera, and he's breathing hard. And it's like, that tells me nothing. More importantly, we never really did that in the original trilogy. And I'm sorry, but stylistically, you have to keep to a certain style of cinematography in order to fit it into the Star Wars universe. If you're doing a different style of editing and a different style of introduction for characters, then it kind of sucks. I already know that J.J. Abrams is planning on shoving a lot more characters and new actors into this, so I'm already a little bit put off by this. I'm not enthused for this film coming out. Now we cut to black again, have some music, and then you have what looks for all the world to be a volleyball rolling across the sand like someone kicked it, followed by a camera, and then they put a little CGI R2-D2 head on top, which is stupid. I'm sorry, but this is really dumb. Is this thing supposed to be our cute little droid? Because they had those mouse droids back in the original trilogy, and there was nothing wrong with the R2D2 droid. This is obviously intended to be cute because it has like a big eye, and it has like a little smaller pivoty eye that like makes it look like an R2 unit. But the whole point of the R2 unit, like, oh my god, if you actually look at the Jawa uh, Sandcrawler and all the droids that they have there, those droids are all actually prototypes of what they had tried to do for the different droids that didn't get approved, like the notorious Gonk, uh, the battery droid that was just like a trash can on feet. That one was actually a prototype for R2D2. Likewise, you had kind of the spidery bot with the little caterpillar treads on the bottom. That was another prototype for R2D2. Uh, you have a few different ones that were prototypes for C3PO where they were trying different heads, where they had like uh, the one that looked kind of drunk always to me, and then the other with the bug eyes, and they kept those because they wanted them as background uh, for the other kinds of droids in this universe. They wanted to make it look like, oh well, there's all these different kinds of droids, and all of these have been salvaged, and a lot of them are older. Uh, the one that was kind of the pair of binoculars on a raising armature, that one was also a prototype for R2. You see these different prototypes for the droids. The design for R2D2 was carefully considered because they wanted a design that blended all of the different elements, one that was kind of, you know, just a single solid unit and didn't have arms that just were out there and exposed, but kind of came out of little openings and hatches and that kind of thing. And, you know, R2 could just kind of take out a different tool for whatever job, and that was one of his armatures that could just kind of go out and interact with whatever needed. Um, and at the same time could stand there on just the two legs and kind of waddle back and forth, or it had um, a third little foot that they all had wheels on the bottom, and it could just roll along a flat surface. It was kind of a really well thought out functional design that actually made sense with this kind of used universe where everything was really more designed around an engineering look than an aesthetic look. This droid rolling along on a ball just looks stupid. I mean, first off, you would have to get that to work somehow, and there's absolutely no reason that makes any sense as to why you would put a droid on a ball. Why you would have it on a ball. Is this a Dyson robot? Is that it? It doesn't make sense. So, it's rolling along what looks to be kind of a Mos Eisley kind of environment. Where are the tools going to come from if this is some form of astromech droid? It doesn't really make sense. Uh, the tools would probably come from somewhere in the sphere underneath it, but that doesn't make sense as much as having just a cylinder with a door opening. What exactly is supposed to go on with that droid? What does it do at all? Anything? It just pisses me off. Cut to black again, and then we see stormtroopers, and they're clearly in some kind of troop carrier, and they're arming their guns, and they're gonna march out. And then there's a young woman on a speeder bike and she's charging across the desert, and it looks like it's a speeder bike with a large cargo compartment in front, which is like, okay, this doesn't tell me anything. You're just showing me things and saying, there's been an awakening. Have you felt it? No, I frickin' haven't felt it because you haven't told me what the hell's going on. I mean, I've seen previews for the other Star Wars movies, including the original trilogy, and and even like the teaser trailer for Episode 1, you got more of a sense of what you were going to be dealing with. This is just showing things. This isn't necessarily saying, oh, well, these characters are going to be important. I have no idea who these people are. Moving on, they cut to black again, and then they cut to X-Wings skimming the surface of the water with weird helmets. Okay, first off, if you pause the video, you can see that these are not standard X-Wings, but these are modified ones for some reason. They've somehow made the wings interlock more, which didn't seem to make that much sense, really. They've just made the S-foils interlock a bit more, and that really doesn't make sense because the whole point of the S-foils going out was that it gave them a little bit more balance, similar to the TIE fighters that had the material out further so that they had a little bit more stability and control but could also spin. And with X-Wings, it kind of made sense that then they could do, up or down turns more, or they could veer to the side a little bit. They were maneuverable. Making them kind of interlock like that really doesn't make that much more sense. These are obviously supposed to be modified X-Wings. They've gotten rid of kind of the beak structure on the front, and they've modified the helmets so that they actually cover less. I'm not even kidding. Like, the original Star Wars trilogy helmets went all the way down to the base of the neck, just like a real pilot's helmet. So it really covered your head. These basically don't. They come down to about here, these new ones. And again, that doesn't make sense. Why would... This is supposed to be a universe designed by, like, engineers, and everything's used, and the X-Wings are, like, used. The X-Wings were actually supposed to be, like, fighters that were designed for, like, planetary and systematic defense, and they had a hyperdrive so that you could take them between systems, but not that terribly powerful, so they could go from one system to another relatively easy. Anyway, so the idea of them being like somehow modified is weird. Like, the TIE fighter was always supposed to be the more advanced fighter. The only new fighters that the Rebellion had, the Rebel Alliance, the only new fighters that they had were the A-Wings and the B-Wings, and that's why they were given the A and B designation. It was because they were the newest fighters. And the A-Wing was intended to combat the TIE fighter by having the same speed and maneuverability, but also having shields and a hyperdrive, which could beat a lot of the fighters that the Empire had. And then the B-Wing was intended to be an even more maneuverable heavy bomber and heavy fighter than what you got in the Y-Wing, which was the original heavy fighter that the Rebellion had, and the X-Wings were the slightly more advanced, stunt fighters and everything, where they could maneuver around and take on the TIE fighters. The whole idea was that, Star Wars: A New Hope, you had this system where you had the lighter, more maneuverable fighters accompanying the heavy fighters, and it was actually expected that the Y-wings were going to be the ones that fire the photon torpedoes or proton torpedoes that took out the Death Star. That's why they bothered with the Y-wings, was because, you know, they weren't quite as fast, but they could easily fire more weaponry and so the X-wings were planning to take out the towers and kind of be a shield. And that's one of the reasons why they had Luke, a farm boy, on that mission, was because, and just gave him a random designation, Red 5. It was always kind of like, oh, well, you're we know you're a good pilot and you'll be lucky if you make it out, but we'll just give you kind of a nonsense designation so that you can kind of help out, and that way we'll give you a fighter. And they didn't, I don't think that they expected Luke to survive, and the fact that he did survive while Biggs didn't, I think really surprised people. They probably expected Biggs in the rebellion to live and Luke to be the one to bite it, but no. And they probably expected Porkins to be the one to hang in there, because he had been, he was a veteran pilot as well. They expected all of these pilots to survive very well, but anyway. So I'm guessing that this is Rogue Group. I'm just gonna look back. Yeah, I'm still really pissed off at that helmet design, because it doesn't protect the jaw at all. There's like a microphone stuck in, and there's like a symbol of the rebellion to one side. It's asymmetrical, which is fine, but it's like, okay, and there's a visor, and it just, I don't know. I'm guessing it's supposed to be like Rogue Group, but honestly, I have seen fan films with more devotion to the style. And then you have some guy in a snowy forest, and he pulls out a lightsaber with a hilt. And for some reason, there are two little lightsaber things going out to the side. Two little lightsaber blades going out to the side to form a hilt. And that's just not smart either, because then, what would be the point of that? All that's going to do is jab you and burn you in the arm. It's not like it's a blade where it's like a claymore and the hilt's going to somehow protect you. They've already shown in the prequel trilogy that if you have like some kind of electromagnetically charged thing, like those staffs in Revenge of the Sith, that will stop a lightsaber from cutting. And it's basically like a shield. And so, like, why wouldn't you just have those on the side, and then those get charged up and protect you without necessarily burning you? It's just, And okay, now they cut to the Millennium Falcon, and the animation on it looks like something you would see in a fan film. And they're like, oh, it's Star Wars, The Force Awakens. And they changed the font to some kind of weird font for The Force Awakens, instead of like any other style we've seen before. And it's like, but the whole point of making it Star Wars is that you're keeping some of the stylistic elements. I realize full well that it's been over 35 years since the original Star Wars movies came out. I understand that. It's been over 35 years. You can't expect it to keep the same style. After all, the prequel trilogy didn't keep all of the same style either. But this is part of the problem with Abrams. This is part of the problem I have with Abrams as a producer and director. When he did the first Star Trek, he decided that he was going to make the entire bridge and all of the Enterprise sets pure white. Do you have any idea how hard it is to keep a white surface clean? It always made so much more sense that on a military vessel, they would make the surfaces gray, just a military gray, just like they do in the military. And it was so ridiculous to have these big open spaces with engineering equipment that looked like it was from a brewery or a dairy. I mean, I'm serious. I perfectly expect that you know, you'll be on the set of some Star Destroyer or some battle station, and next thing you know, they'll be in a dairy or a brewery. Or they'll be, on some set like that, where it's like, okay, this doesn't fit at all. I'm sorry. I know I'm being weird, but the only set where they could get away with having everything white was on the blockade runner in the first Star Wars film. And even then, that was because it was limited just to that first scene. You walk through the Empire sets with the characters, and things are dark gray. They're very modern looking. They're very practical, wide hallways and everything, so that people can get around from A to B. You have the mouse droids running around. It wasn't just everything white and all this transparent holographic stuff. Yes, he updated everything, but the problem was that it was too out there. Even Lost in Space, as awful as that film has held up, tried to be just a little bit more ahead and go with things that you could actually see using. Sets, the sets weren't pristine white. The costumes looked somewhat functional and comfortable for space travel. Although I don't know how you would go to the bathroom in them. It just, yeah, and even then those outfits were really just intended for sleeping in the freeze pods, not this other thing. But they went with this sort of organic-like design. The only other set where I have ever seen them go all white for the design was in Return of the Jedi. They had the Mon Calamari fleets and the sets for that all white. It didn't quite make sense, but it was just kind of to contrast and highlight and offer a certain lighting benefit. Anyway, so I am not very positive about what's going to happen with Star Wars Episode 7. I'm pretty sure it's going to suck. I'm pretty sure that it's going to be overblown, over the top, completely, dismay a lot of people, and not really respect the original source material that people are already kind of enthralled with. It's going to try and take it in its own direction that's more just, oh well, let's just put together the movie and pump it out and get it out there. And when I listen to commentary track for the Superman films, I listen to the commentary track for Superman 2 and 3, which had commentary from the producers. And Superman 4 had just commentary from the director. So I listened to the commentary tracks. And listening to the commentary tracks, I could tell that the Salkinds were only interested in putting out the movie. Just put it out there. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad. Just get it finished. And, you know, when there's that emphasis on just finishing it, and you just slap it together and you don't care about whether the story's good or not, or whether it has anything good in it, and it's just kind of, oh well, this looks cool, and oh, that looks fun. You know what you get? You get Highlander 2. I'm not even kidding you. The majority of the commentary for Highlander 2 consists of, oh well, we thought that this scene would be fun to put in, and we thought that this scene would be fun to put in. And as a result, at the train station, you get this psychic cook show where he talks to ghosts and cooks a meal, which is stupid. And then you get a video on an airplane where they show the plane crashing and people flying about, which is funny for a sketch idea, but not as a scene in a movie. Then General Katana lands, and he lands in a train for some reason, and it suddenly turns into a heavy metal video where he goes into the conductor's compartment, the driver's compartment, cranks up the speed, laughs, and people in the back are all flying about, and they all hit the back wall, and a guy's eyes bug out and explode, and everyone dies except for General Katana. And then the train crashes through a wall, which is a cute idea for a music video. A little gruesome, but it's an idea. And then you neglect the fact that this is a scene in a movie, and as a scene in a movie, it's non sequitur, and it's going to suck. So what you get when you don't care about the story, and you're just putting in stuff that you think is going to be fun and cool, and the writers are just trying to fit it into a continuous narrative, you get Highlander 2, you get Superman 3, and to a large degree you also get Superman 4. I'm going to do a full review on Superman 4, but for right now I wanted to say Superman 4 was the product of very good intentions. Christopher Reeve helped write it. And the Salkinds kept cutting the budget so much that then it ended up being the worst of all four of the Christopher Reeves Superman movies. You have... I mean, going in, the director and the writers had really good ideas. I'm not even kidding. Like, I've seen the stuff. I've heard the commentary track where the director talks about it, where the director says, you know, just looking at these credits, you can tell it's not going to be as good because it is not looking like any of the other Superman movies where they went with that very original opening, and they made it very epic and everything. And they gave it a little bit of style and a sense of itself. And they really let the John Williams music play it up so that you were excited for it. Now, when they came up with the plot idea for Nuclear Man, one idea they had was that Nuclear Man would be played by Christopher Reeve and would look different, have a different uniform and everything, but he would have Gene Hackman's voice. And the only remnant that they had of that was Gene Hackman's voice. They tried to find another actor who looked enough like Christopher Reeve that then they could do split screening and they could do some special effects work there to make it look like Christopher Reeves was both people. And, he would have actually, in fact, been both people. But the Salkinds kept cutting the budget for the film. Every time you turned around, apparently the budget kept getting cut, and the result was something really horrific. Because the Salkinds didn't care about the story. They just cared about putting the movie out and getting the money. And it didn't matter if it was any good. So Reeves wanted to deal with, or Christopher Reeve, not Reeves, Christopher Reeve wanted to deal with two subjects. He wanted to deal with AIDS and the Cold War nuclear threat. He wanted to deal with two very powerful subjects that were on people's minds at the time. And they just, the producers just didn't care enough about the film to give it any kind of gravitas. And it's very unfortunate. This film, this trailer for Star Wars Episode VII, The Force Awakens, this teaser says to me that JJ Abrams does not care about gravitas. He doesn't care about poignancy. All he cares about is spectacle. He doesn't care about characters having identifiability. He just cares about whether or not they seem cool. Not whether or not you can identify with them. One of the things about the original trilogy characters was you could identify with them. Okay? You could identify with Luke Skywalker. He was afraid to leave home, a little bit, but he also wanted to leave home. He wanted to get out from under his uncle's thumb, and he wanted to go and find his destiny out in the world. You could identify with Han Solo, who was kind of smug and self-interested and egotistical, but that was because that was what got him through the universe. You can understand Princess Leia's perspective of things, where she wasn't just some little helpless little girl. She was willing to fight because she was a freedom fighter. And she believed in the cause of the rebellion. She was also a diplomat and a politician. So, you could understand all of those characters. You could understand Obi-Wan's perspective, being enlightened and wise and wanting to pass on his knowledge and wanting to keep Luke safe because he could see that Luke had the destiny to defeat Vader. And recreate the Jedi. Basically reinvent the Jedi and everything, and bring the light side of the Force into play in the battle of the rebellion against the Empire. You could see all their points. You could see all of their MOs and what they were thinking and everything. You can understand their character motivations. When you got to the prequel trilogy, you didn't quite get the same sense of who these characters were and what their motivations were. Their identity was not something that you held in common with yourself. It was more, these are the characters who are going to become the major players in our story. So it kind of worked. It told an interesting enough story, but it was kind of relying on brand name recognition, and it had Lucas's extreme control over it, where he knew what was going on for the characters, but what actually worked for the characters didn't really work for the audience. You had to have a little bit more, oh, well, that makes sense why you would do that kind of thinking. Even when Irving Kershner showed the Empire Strikes Back to kids, when they showed the Empire Strikes Back to kids, they asked, well, what do you think is going on with Darth Vader? Do and they said, well, obviously he's lying about being Luke's father. And they were okay with seeing Luke get his hand cut off. And that's not a G-rated moment. That's a PG-13 moment. I remember that Empire Strikes Back was rated PG-13. So it was not intended for little kids. So their conclusion was that Darth Vader was lying about that, and not that it could possibly be true. He was just lying about it because it would get Luke on his side. Which is pretty good kid reasoning. Kids have a certain sense about the world. And the audience thinks about, well, why would the character do that? Or why did the character do that? Or, what's the goal? What's the reasoning behind it? What's their level of experience behind things? They can't just do something because it seems like they should do that. They do it because it's what matters to them. So I have no idea who these characters are in the episode 7 teaser. I have no idea what's going on or who's talking. I have no idea where these scenes are taking place. It's just random scenes that mean absolutely nothing to anyone. And it doesn't make me want to see the movie. It defeats its own purpose. It keeps cutting to black to show nothing, and then then they bring up the Star Wars theme, the fanfare, with the Millennium Falcon fighting a couple of TIE fighters over the desert. Or some kind of Corellian freighter, but is probably the Millennium Falcon. Anyway, why the heck are we looking at this? Why? This doesn't make sense. Why are they fighting? What's leading us in at this point? All we're getting is a camera shot following the Millennium Falcon upside down, and then a couple of fighters, and oh look, we have full CGI X-Wings this time. I'll tell you a secret. CGI X-Wings date back to 1978. I'm not even kidding. The special effects house that produced the special effects for The Last Starfighter, which I'm also going to be doing a review on, they put together a demonstration for 20th Century Fox of computer image X-Wings. They put these together in 1978, the year after Star Wars 1, the first film, came out. They were able to make the X-Wings do maneuvers that you could never get with motion capture. Not without months and months of planning. They got the X-Wings to maneuver in ways that you would not have been able to see. And in fact, that you did not see until Lucas Arts Games produced some Star Wars games in the 90s. But they were doing computer graphics X-Wings way back in 1978. The Fox executives were not impressed. But the actual people who worked on the special effects for the original Star Wars were incredibly impressed. And they were like, this is the way it's going to go. You don't have to build the models. You don't have to worry as much about continuity from, if a model gets damaged. And frankly, it probably would have saved a lot of production time in the long run on Empire Strikes Back if they had started using CGI in that place. But they didn't, so that's all hypothetical. But they showed off their modified X-Wings in this preview because, that's what people are going to want to see. Spaceships flying around and zapping at one another. That to me is not what Star Wars is about. Star Wars is very nice for the space battles, but Star Wars is about so much more. It really is. Star Wars has always been about story and characters. You can't just show us cool things happening and expect us to like everything about it. Just because you were able to get 2 moderately successful Star Trek films off the ground, neither of which was particularly original, that doesn't mean that his touch on Star Wars, his take on Star Wars, is going to be at all good. Frankly, I'm gonna pan it. I'm just gonna. I'll watch it, but no, I'm not gonna pay money to watch this. I'll watch it on cable or I'll watch it on DVD, but that's it. I'm not gonna pay for it. I'm not interested in seeing it. And when it comes out, I will try to give you a full review as best I can, but I'm not paying money to see this. If someone takes me to it, I'll see it, but I'm not going to spend my money on it. It looks like it's going to be the biggest disappointment since episode 1, 2, and 3. Anyway, so thanks for watching all of this. I'm sorry that I kind of slowed down and went off on some tangents, but I think that it kind of came around for you, hopefully, and got into some better developed material. That's what this is all about. This is an important thing to our culture, and we can't just have it put in the hands of some shyster who cares more about how the film looks and whether or not it's going to sell than who actually cares about the story and actually getting us interested in it. As it is, this teaser trailer does not interest me in seeing the film. So, like I said, it defeats itself. It doesn't work. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.